All right. Hello, Internet, to another graphic novel club with my partner in crime, Damien.
Sleepy Reader.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Go
ahead. Sorry.
Whatever. We're going to talk two books today, and the first one's going to be this Superman End of the Century. And, ow.
It's a painful book.
Very. I might be bleeding. Second one is Butcher Baker, the Righteous Maker, Joe Casey, OG.
Rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub.
Yeah, we can get to that in a minute. I wanted to start off with the Superman book, but before we leap into these two books, I just kind of want to give people some background. Damien and I were more or less just looking for stuff to talk about, comic-wise. And so I just kind of, I put these two books to him to choose, and he just read both. And well, neither
I got
of us.
my copies out of the library. You got yours for like out of a $3 bin at the convention or something?
Yeah, I got this from a $3 bin. I've had the Butcher Baker sitting on my shelf because I remember getting some issues of the miniseries back when, and I found it for cheap somewhere. I just was reading, and I've been trying to get through stuff and find more impetus to get through more trades, work through my backlog.
And the Butcher Baker is a very beautiful, oversized volume.
Oh,
and
yeah.
The Superman End of the Century is an original graphic novel. It was never serialized, I believe.
Yeah, it's just this crazy hardcover, and I looked that up to make sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it came out in paperback or not.
Right. Part of the reason I want to have the impetus up front, and I'm going to lead off with this on the Superman, is I wasn't a huge fan of either of these. I don't know. What was your general reception to Superman End of the Century?
Well, I did not love it, and it reminded me of in the past when I used to dip into Superman, and it felt like they didn't know what to do with Superman, especially after they married him off to Lois Lane. He was just supposed to have this happy marriage with Lois Lane, and then some kind of adventure would almost happen around him, which is what happens in this, right? It's not really Superman's adventure so much as Lex Luthor's ex-wife, a little bit of Lex Luthor. But then I on digital comics somewhere, I read a few early 2000s or late 90s Superman, and they were much worse than this. This shown compared to them.
Well, you'd hope it's better than
my
some. So I want to lead people into this a little bit because I imagine most people haven't read this because I never even heard about it before I saw it. So when I picked this up, my thought was that this was going to be a Superman Elseworlds tale where he was like caught up as some sort of like circus attraction, essentially, like the strong man, which I thought would be a really cool idea.
Amazing escapes, during rescues.
Yeah, like Superman is a very long extension from the original like strongman storytelling sort of thing. And so I just thought that'd be really cool. It is not that at all. What it is a story about there's a MacGuffin in there that they start off with some pirate ship from way back when, which is where the other artist, not Stuart Immonen, comes in, I feel.
Is there another artist? I didn't realize.
Yeah.
Joe Marsden?
Yeah. And so this is mostly Immonen's baby, but I imagine he brought another artist because there's this old Prince Valiant-esque sort of... That's where my mind went with that one. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think they meant it to look like old sepia photographs.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, the art style is... I wouldn't have thought Prince Valiant, but it is, it evokes a sort of older, more magazine illustration style applied to comics in a way.
Yeah, there has to be a better choice than Prince Valiant. Sorry, I just was laughing.
No, I mean, I understood what you meant, but
yeah,
it's retro more than just being in sepia tones. There's something very retro about it.
Right. And then the rest of the comic looks more like a standard 2000s comic. It's very imminent, though. And so he's at the head of the book. It caught me off guard because this is at the height of Superman lore. Basically, just a handful of years before it gets rebooted with the New 52. So this is as thick as continuity gets. And it's just placed right in the middle of it. Like, whereas this was its own graphic novel, like, it pulls so much from wherever the comics were at the time. I mean, the Lois Lane Superman marriage, for sure. The fact that Lex Luthor is... I had no idea Lex Luthor was ever married.
And had a baby.
And, yeah. Was a family man. Who knew, right?
So I imagine that if you knew enough, this could be wedged between two specific Superman comic books in the continuity. Like, it feels so tightly put in there, which is odd for a standalone graphic novel.
Right. So it's very bizarre on a number of levels there. And it's also very much kind of a Superman story in that Superman's trying to deal with this problem, but it's not really his problem, which right. I'm all for. That's more where I feel superheroes should be more of the time. But it was just kind of weird to have this sort of deal, and it's just kind of a...
It feels like you could have done the entire story with just Lex Luthor and his ex-wife and the characters around them and left Superman out of it, to me.
Yeah. I feel like you need Lois Lane in there for the way the story advances a bit.
Well, she's kind of the reporter who finds some of the things out, although I don't think anyone but us and now I've forgotten the name of Lex Luthor's wife, who is kind of an immortal.
Yeah, that's, I think, supposed to be the big reveal. Like, I'd say spoiler, but...
I think it comes pretty early on. I just spoiled it then.
Well, it's not... I mean, it's early enough in... to me, this felt like it could have been a 4-issue mini, and that would have been a reveal around the second issue.
Right.
So... what's interesting about that is his wife being a eternal or immortal, however you want to look at that. She's tied to this old pirate shippy background story that's going on.
Well, the pirate ship. So the other big factor of her story is she has a son who some evil cult, I think in Germany or somewhere, 100 years ago, did an experiment on to try to steal his immortality, and instead it kind of turned him evil. And she's been, throughout the ages, trying to get him to become good again, and finally gives up, and someone helps her entomb him, and that's where it involves the pirate ships. The ships are helping her bring him to this distant island where no one will find his body or something.
Yeah, that's my
interpretation.
I think you're right. It was kind of confusing for me because this is a woman who's married Lex Luthor and who's not like a good person.
Right.
The problem is the morality of this whole thing is so freaking skewed because it's a Superman story. And whereas people would normally be kind of like good guys or bad guys, it feels like it's all the bad guys, but they're dealing with their own personal drama. So it's kind of a weird take, and so that kind of threw me off. And of course, she hates Lex Luthor all throughout this, but I'm like, well, then why were you two? Because it's not like it was like a one-night thing or something. They were married.
They don't give us the backstory on their marriage. They just assume we've read whatever issues Lex Luthor was married to her in, if that happened.
Right. And that feels so crucial to this story that it's a little...
Yeah, so I feel like to those who are watching or will watch this, we're basically reporting this is somewhat interesting, but really not. Just watch out. It's not a standalone Elseworlds novel, nor a standalone sort of modern Superman novel. It's just some small piece in whatever the larger mosaic was going on at the time.
Yeah, like if you're a bigger Superman fan, I think this would be great. Like as far as Superman stories go, like it was intriguing and it was different. I thought there was some cool thoughts in here, but it is a bit confusing, not only because of a certain continuity issue, but the way the stories are presented. There's kind of some information that's just particular to within these pages that is kind of not portrayed in the best way. And I feel like the trade-off of art had a little bit to do with that, because the fact that this lady is supposed to be the same character, until it was explicitly pointed out in the plot, I couldn't draw that line because it didn't look like the same woman to me.
Because of two different artists?
Yeah.
I think the first time she showed up, I didn't figure that out, but I figured it out pretty soon. You know, the other side of this that struck me, when Superman was involved with the story, the emphasis was really on what a Boy Scout he is.
Yeah.
And how completely perfect he is. And that is kind of an interesting contrast to the book we are going to talk about afterwards. And his relationship with Lois is perfect to me. I mean, they seem to have the perfect wedding and marriage.
Yeah. There was a moment in here where someone was assaulting Lois Lane, and Superman rushes in to save her, but she like judo flips him and like chops him out, and she was like full on superhero on her own. And I thought that was kind of cool, but at the same time, like, man, I guess with her character at that point, they almost had to make her like, you know, a very capable superhero almost in her own right.
Right. Well, because by this point, the whole Superman saves Lois Lane all the time idea of the early Superman is so off from our perceptions of how men and women should be with each other anymore.
Right. It was just yeah, that was a that was a trip. I don't know.
I guess, you know, whenever I focus on Superman, I get obsessed with how can you do this character and make him interesting. And I felt like that Stuart Immonen didn't know what to do with him other than make him sort of Johnny Pure Boy.
Right. Well, I think the best thing that they did with Superman in this story is basically just skirt using him.
Right. Yeah, and more put Lois in there as a useful point of view character to do some reporting on this mysterious island and what Lex Luthor's doing there.
Right. So I guess, I mean, Superman came in for some big fight at the end with the sun, and it's not really the end, but
well, now Lex Luthor was it a son or a daughter? I think it was a daughter.
I think so, yeah.
Who is probably immortal also. So I'd love to know what happened to her after this graphic novel.
Disappeared to the Annals of Pandora or whatever her name was.
She was the Countessa. But Lex Luthor gets the baby in the end. But our last scene is of the Contessa saying she'll be back for her baby someday when Lex Luthor's empire falls apart or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like a to be continued, but at the same time, the way the story read, like the way she's saying that is like, I'll be back when he's long and dead, basically, or, you know.
Well, if you're immortal, you can just wait out people. Wait till they're old and feeble or whatever.
It's just super funny to me for a character to say that about a character who's been around for 75 years and essentially not aged. It was kind
of yeah. But I don't know about at DC, but at Marvel they talk about kind of rolling time where everything is always about 10 years old historically, and they just keep rolling it forward and keeping it. And surely Superman has to be sort of along those lines.
Yeah, I think DC is supposed to have more of like a rubber band theory of time, but it all just kind of fades away, and I don't know. So I don't know. I don't have a lot more to say about that book, honestly. It was
It's interesting to see Stuart Immonem's art from 15 years ago, because I'm mostly now familiar with him on his Marvel work.
Yeah.
He seemed a bit more, I don't know, Brian Hitch, a calmer, less cinematic Brian Hitch. Like if Brian Hitch is movies, then Stuart Immonen was TV. But it's still somewhat, it's got a almost photographic feel to it. So that was interesting to me. I enjoyed looking at the art. And it was a book written by an artist. I didn't know Stuart Immonen could write. He certainly writes pretty well. It's just like maybe it's hard to write Superman.
Yeah, I feel like there's a few flubs in the book, but nothing that you don't see in other materials. It was just weird because this felt like it was his baby, and I thought it was going to be a bit more its own thing, where it wasn't. Right. So...
Well, I assume that he, for years had this idea about this immortal woman and her evil immortal son, and then he found a way to incorporate it with Superman.
I guess
that's just a guess, a wild guess.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you don't have any other last thoughts,
I don't have any other thoughts about it, but it was interesting to go from the Boy Scout of Superman to the exact opposite in Butcher Baker.
There you go. Yeah. So, what's your overall impression on this one?
Do you want me to go first? My overall impression is kind of taking the comedian out of Watchmen and putting him into a more zany, sort of retro underground comics kind of vibe, where any and all authority figures are evil, but all the bad guys are evil too. So you just have corruption within corruption within corruption. And also the vibe from underground comics, as I remember them from a long time ago, is we're just being naughty for the sake of being naughty. Also, there's those kinds of scenes in here. And mixing in other kind of pop culture cliches like the Smokey and the Bandit kind of thing with the fat, incompetent sheriff who won't stop chasing after the good old boy who breaks the law.
Yeah,
that was my way of viewing this book.
No. I mean, you're totally spot on with all of it. I'll be honest, like, when I was reading this, I was kind of... It's super wordy, but this comic is totally, like, pure id at the same time. So it's super wordy about stuff that's just, like, completely reactionary and totally, like, boobs, alcohol, punching a truck through a wall and then leaping out and punching someone in the face. Like...
Right.
Like, on some level, this is, in my mind, is kind of like if you were to take the rough idea of Axe Cop, which is just letting this kid go nuts and have fun.
Right. And they look the same.
Yeah, and then you bring him back when he's, 16, and it would be about this.
Yeah.
It's just, it was kind of hard to, like, get through some of these bubbles and stuff where they're just... Right. You read it and it says nothing, and meanwhile there's like literally just like a massive cock right there. And you're like, I can't.
It's kind of like someone who thinks they're a poet but likes monster truck rallies at the same time.
It's pretty good.
Wants to show off all their linguistic tricks while doing the monster truck rally at the same time. But you're calling him all id is a great way to view it too.
Yeah. I will say though, the art in this comic is awesome. It will go from these crazy pages where it's like pretty much grayscale with like a little bit of color to have that sort of effect. And then you'll get these crazy full color pages that are just all over the place, and there's super like stylized comic booky in one way, and then you'll go to pages that are kind of halfway in between and almost look Goon or Eisner-esque in a way, in just the way the lines are rendered. And so it's like this one artist is like just flipping between art styles to the point where after a few things are established, you'll literally see those three art styles blended in one frame. So like the background will be one way, the character will be one way, another. I'm looking at a page like that right here, where you have one character one way, another character another in the background, kind of. It's just.
At times, it's a bit Bill Sienkiewicz at his wildest.
Okay.
And I don't know if you're familiar with. There used to be an illustrator. He was not a comic book artist, named Ralph Steadman.
Okay.
Who was kind of I think he was pretty popular in the early '80s. He illustrated a lot of Hunter S. Thompson books.
Oh, okay.
Kind of Hunter S. Thompson-ish, I guess, but without the maturity. In quotes, I put the maturity of Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah. So, yeah, this book definitely has authority issues.
We should say the bad guys behind it all are the main manipulators of the government, who are Dick Cheney and Jay Leno working together.
Yeah, which...
It's like, where did he come up with that? It's just sort of gonzo bizarre.
Yeah, and there's a guy chasing him that, like you said, was that guy of the law who just like won't let it go, but he's the bad guy also. And they have this really prominent female supervillain chasing him down, and she's the White Lightning.
White Lightning. And she's naked, basically.
Oh, like entirely, yeah.
I think her nipples show more when she's using her power or something. I don't know.
Because.
And then there's what do you call it? She's called the Absolute or something like that, or Absolutely.
Yeah, and she's like this ethereal.
She's not a she. She's a hermaphrodite. She's got both sets of organs.
Yeah.
And she's very voluptuous. But she has no face. It's just cosmic stuff.
Right, and she's just kind of around half the time. And
I loved the supervillains. Like the Absolutely and White Lightning and El Sushi and
who's interesting.
What was Angerhead? His power is when he gets angry, some wild power just comes out of him, but he has this tiny head on a giant body. Although a lot of the characters have tiny heads on giant bodies.
Yeah.
And we see the penises of every character that has a penis. We see it multiple times.
Yeah. So this book doesn't hold back at all. Got to give it that.
I think it would have been fun if it was 4 issues. It's an 8-issue arc, and I felt like it just got way stretched out. Because you get the joke. You know, the joke is we're going to just go gonzo, and we hate the government, and we hate all mankind, I guess, and everything is just crazy gonzo. Smash it up.
In the first issue, had a bit more commentary on the whole superhero thing, because they make this very clear allusion to like Butcher Baker's like this universe is Captain America, and like after the war, he just kind of moved on. He just kept like womanizing and drinking, whatever. And now he's getting older, but not like Captain America. Like his dick ain't working right. And,
and I think he basically lives at Plato's Retreat.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess it still exists. I think it was an infamous 70s orgy club in New York City. And he just lives there. And apparently, you know, has sex every 3 minutes or something.
But he goes and has this kind of off relationship with someone who used to be a super heroine. And
and he actually sort of has feelings for her. It was the only moment where he had any human feelings or human relationships or anything.
It's basically the only moment in the book that had any. Um,
I think it would come down, whether we would recommend this to someone is whether you kind of crave this kind of art.
yeah.
I don't know how, because the story itself really could be one issue.
One like 80-page, like
or
overblown
40-page issue in my mind. I mean, it's just I don't even know how he managed to stretch it out for these 8 issues.
I know I could see some like giant-sized 80-page, like that just fits
Yeah.
in my mind, like some just big, oversized whatever thing, and then blown out and being
Right.
done. Like, yeah. And it's kind of funny because we both got the same printing. I don't know if they've collected any other way, but it's this hardcover that like is nicely printed, but then it's like just like a Sharpie cover. And this comic had a whole bunch of gorgeous covers, so why they did this?
Yeah, that is interesting. I don't know why.
And
And it's a very, it's the kind with good binding and very high quality paper and everything. It's not a cheapy thrown together.
and like a third of the printing is like this back matter. We have a cover gallery and like
a 20-page essay or something.
Yeah, and some other details and pinup notes and a small lead-up comic in the back, I guess.
Some comic they did. The first comic this creative team did together called Funk. I don't see it. I didn't actually read it. I just looked at it. I didn't really see its connection to Butcher Baker. It's in a different style. It's about kids going to a strip club, I think. Well, that level, but it seems pretty realistic.
Right. Comparatively, it's not really the same. Just, where else are they going to put it, I guess, at this point? I don't know.
Joe Casey certainly must be an odd character.
Yeah.
Because this back matter is, I think, because the first thing I did is I got a digital copy because they had the first issue for free, as they often do with Image Comics. And because I was thinking, do I want to buy this? And I read the first issue and kind of hated it. And so I said, okay, I'll get it from the library.
Fair enough.
And I liked the rest of the comic more than the first issue. But I think at the back of each issue, he had like a 6 or 7 page essay, and then he's collected them all together at the back here. And it looks like just one long giant thing. And he just loves to talk and talk and talk. He just loves the sound of his own voice, I guess. I'm just randomly opening up in the essay. So here's a beginning of a paragraph. So there came a day like any other day, where I drunkenly stumbled into the local comic book emporium, which here in Hollywood can be the kind of bitchin' psychedelic wonderland I dared not even dream of as a kid. And almost instantly, the miasmic stench of death permeated the air to an almost suffocating degree. That's all one sentence. So that's I just randomly picked out sample of how he likes to write when he's writing prose. He loves the sound of his own voice. And I don't know. He wants to be like one of those, not beat writers, but one of those writers like Henry Miller or something, who is profane but profound and poetic or something. But I don't think he has any profound thoughts to contribute, at least in this book.
Not in this book. That's the thing, is like he's done a lot of great stuff, but I feel like he needs an editor to kind of rein something in, so that he has to kind of polish something, get something quality out, instead of just letting every word that's
right
worthwhile slip onto the page. Yeah.
So, well, for you, he's most famous for his work on Deadpool, right?
No. That's Joe Kelly.
Joe Kelly. Wait.
I mix them up all the time too. So Joe Casey's done some really cool stuff, especially in Wildstorm. He did some Majestic work that was really interesting. His stuff with Wildcats is up there for him. I think the biggest book he's done, though, at least in recent memory, is Sex.
Right. He's done recently, I think he did Sex, and he did something called Bounce, which was about drugs that give you superpowers.
That's sitting on the shelf too, and now I'm a little more trepidatious.
And now he has a new one about Asgardian-like gods who are kind of like the Jack Kirby version of Thor, come down to Earth for a party they do every century or something. What was that called? Like Valhalla something. It's just started. Okay. And to me, the book that I remember him most because of my Jack Kirby obsession is Godland.
Yeah.
Which I haven't read all of Godland, but I enjoyed it for a while. But that was totally an homage to the more cosmic side of Jack Kirby, like the Eternals and stuff like that.
Right. So, I mean, he has some range, but this might be the lower side of that range.
And he also apparently, I mean, he's part of this group that does kids' cartoons, right? Like, do they do Ben 7 or whatever it's called? Ben 10.
Ben 10 and the Spider-Man cartoon, and they just got signed on to do some Mega Man cartoon, apparently.
Right.
Yeah.
So this might be just him kind of blowing off steam after writing clean stuff for kids all day.
That'd actually be pretty funny if that was the case. Yeah. It's one of those books that, I mean, when you're there, you just kind of get taken along for the ride, but there's not, like, it's all about the violence and the sex and the just, like, rah, whatever's on the page at the moment, but it's not this bigger thing. I guess it's not some graphic novel that you really mull over later. It's
right. I think if you were, and I don't know if this happens to teenagers now, because there's so many options of what they see and read. But if you were just like reading mainstream superheroes, and were the right age, like 17 or something, and then came across this, you would, love it for its transgressiveness and for its, turning the whole superhero genre up on its head. But most of us have read other material turning the superhero genre on its head, and just not quite as outrageously in terms of the penises and the violence. But
right, because I've read so many other things that are like different takes on superheroes that are a lot more cogent and more interesting. I don't know.
The other thing is, if you can have Dick Cheney and Jay Leno as your bad guys, that seems like 10 years old already. Maybe this came out longer ago than we were able to. Originally, they were able to find out.
Yeah. 2011.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know.
Excuse me.
The other interesting thing that we found out right before we logged on was apparently Butcher Baker is the name of some horrific serial killer in America's history. And why they took that name and used it here seems even more odd, I guess.
There's never any reason for his name Butcher Baker hinted at in this book, as far as I could tell.
No, not really.
And if you take it as the name of a serial killer, then you kind of imagine someone who eats their victims or something, which I don't feel like that's the one place he didn't go in this book. I didn't know about the serial killer, and I thought it was somehow a reference to the Rub-a-Dub-Dub, 3 Men in a Tub, the Butcher, the Baker, and the Candlestick Maker. And instead of Candlestick Maker, he puts in the Righteous Maker. The hero's full name is Butcher Baker, the Righteous Maker. See, I think it's the random id theory again of yours. That he just randomly picked that name.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I think you should read the entire back matter and see if you can find any clues.
Oh, God. Yeah. Just dive into that real quick. Well, we kind of blew through those books.
Well, that inspired me to start reading this, which I had bought recently, which is also by Joe Casey, Nixon's Pals. And I really bought it because of Chris Burnham's art, this is earlier Chris Burnham art, as it turns out. And I haven't read very far in it yet, but so far it's actually very good. But there is the urge towards outrageousness. Like there's this this woman who has two faces on her breasts, and on her face she just has two nipples.
Well,
and I think one of the faces is kind of like a pirate, and the other one's more like a woman of sorts. And there's a bizarre scene where one of her breasts bites the guy's hand. Anyway, it's quite promising actually, and it's very different from Butcher Baker, despite some outrageousness in it.
Huh.
So if you find this in a $3 bin, I would say grab it. Oh, yeah. There's right on the end pages, the breasts.
Oh, jeez. And an eye patch.
Right, that's the piratey one. Or I guess he's like smoking a cigar. Having a male breast is kind of weird, but I suppose freeing, perhaps.
You're that far ahead.
But the premise, this guy Nixon is a parole officer for low-level supervillains, basically. They don't even mention if there are any superheroes in this world, but there's these criminals who have slightly superhuman powers. So he is this woman's parole officer. She used to be a prostitute, and now she's has a legal job of being a stripper.
Okay.
And then another one of his parolees, this guy, I think he's called the Bricklayer. And the story starts with the Bricklayer. He kind of looks like Ben Grimm the Thing, but more grotesque. And he's bought a mail order portal to another dimension. He's trying to go to another dimension to cure his Bricklayer look. Like how Ben Grimm is always trying to be cured of being the Thing. So I don't know. I just thought I'd mention that since we're talking about this. It seems like a good book.
Yeah, no, that's...
So I won't be all down on Joe Casey.
But no, Joe Casey's done some great stuff. I just don't feel that book is. And I remember liking it more when I read it in 2011, but I guess that makes sense. 4 years ago. I don't know.
When you still remembered your adolescence.
Well, that and an issue at a time. That's a book I feel like if I was in the middle of the week.
Did you read the whole run, or do you think you just read a few issues?
I read a handful of issues. It's only 8, so I probably got about half of it, and then it might have just disappeared, or I dropped it for whatever else. I don't know.
Yeah, it may have seemed better if you just had part of it and you thought that there was more depth to it tucked away that you would have gotten to if you'd read all the issues.
Yeah, I can tell. Speaking of issues, did you get far in your pile this week, or?
No, I still have only read Lumberjanes.
Okay.
And now that summer vacation for my daughter has started, I'm remembering that it's much harder to find time, personal time during the summer.
Fair enough.
Because she's not at school, so she's not, her energy level is much higher when I get home, and she demands more attention. Excuse me. Plus, we do, we go on vacations and we do stuff during the summer and more projects around the house and everything. But I got a lot of comics, so I hope to get to them. You are more just reading graphic novels now and cutting way back on your weekly pull?
That and some things just lined up where my pull just kind of axed itself and is going to keep axing itself for a while. But I've been trying new books. Like I picked up Midnighter and Green Arrow. This week I picked up Black Canary, and I thought that was really interesting. And I'm definitely going to pick up the next issue. It's so different. I don't feel like I'm completely sold yet. So
Well, Alex and Ada just ended, and the final issue, I mean, it's not a twist in the normal sense, but actually I've read 2/3 of Alex and Ada, but it went somewhere that I wasn't expecting after this is issue 15. So issue 14 could have been the end, but then they go beyond to sort of show more. And they seem to be doing it very well. So I was about to say, if you ever read the trades of Alex and Ada, I'd love to discuss that. But it's such a good book that I don't know if there's that much. We might just sit there and say, yeah, it was really good. Have you read Alex and Ada? I don't think you have been reading it.
No, that's the sort of thing that I don't see the need to pick up in issues.
Right. But I think you like the Luna Brothers already, but I think you'll like it a lot in trade.
Yeah.
And your girlfriend will probably. It'll be one you and your girlfriend can enjoy. Just judging from the few things you've mentioned about her comics that she likes.
I'm going to force her to finish her Cable run. So. Yeah. I'm trying to think what else I got. I got the Turtles tie-in, April and Casey, and that was weird. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but I'm going to pick up every one because I've come this far, and it wasn't bad by any means, but it was just kind of unnecessary.
And was that done in? I looked at the previews online. Was it kind of done in more of an animation style of art?
To me, it felt more webcomic.
A webcomic.
Yeah, I could see animation.
Well, maybe just more Photoshop-y looking or something.
Yeah, it definitely has that like Photoshop colored feel, which is kind of. It's not my favorite thing, but I'll push through.
And I haven't read the last issue yet of 8. Were you getting that? Because I'm pretty excited over.
Oh, I need to. Is that another issue this week?
I think it came out this week. Yeah, issue 5. It's the last issue, and
what? There's not 8 issues.
I know it should have been 8 issues. But this is one I would highly recommend getting in trade. And
I have every other issue. So
it shouldn't be to be continued. Oh, you were buying it?
We got a lot of them, and I just haven't plowed through them yet.
Oh, so I didn't realize.
I like the trade. Once I find the first issue.
Yeah, so you don't need the trade then.
But no, I'll be reading that. Secret 6 was the other thing I got this week, which was great, but it's coming out so erratically.
I'm waiting on that, but it's taking so long. I'm tempted to just go buy the 3 issues and maybe it'll start coming out.
Yeah, it'll be caught up in the last year of it, basically.
That's very weird and unusual for a DC book these days.
Yeah, especially when Gail Simone doesn't have that much going on right now, so I don't know.
Right. And she's such a consummate professional, you would think it's normal for her to crank out the scripts. So I don't know if it's her fault or something's going on behind the scenes.
I doubt it, because there's no way she really wrote the way she set up at least the first issue. There's no way she didn't have more in mind that she didn't write more of. So it'd be too weird. I don't know. It's a strange set of circumstances, but everything going on at DC right now is super strange, and I'm only willing to try out the $2.99 titles. So,
well, and I don't get Marvel Comics in real time, but everything I see about it makes me nervous that the whole Hollywood side of it is going to become more and more. I mean, it already is in control a lot, but like they've made it, their big announcement recently was putting Brian Michael Bendis on Iron Man, because Iron Man is now their flagship character because he's their most successful movie character.
Yeah, I'm willing to let that aspect slide at least. I mean, Bendis was on Avengers as a big thing, then he was on X-Men as a really big thing. They want to move him to something else.
But he made the Avengers the big thing, right? And he made Ultimate Spider-Man a big thing. Whereas this is now, let's take our guy who can make something big and put it on this thing that no one reading comic books really gets excited about and see, because we want to line up with Hollywood more.
Well, I don't know.
Maybe I'm misreading there.
I don't know. Like, he did the X-Men thing for a while, but it does feel like I don't know, there was less to be
Right,
had
and
there.
they're moving X-Men off into their own universe, their own planet, I've heard. Again, because of the movie stuff, and there's a rumor that they will be killing off Reed Richards in the Secret Wars because they just want to keep Fantastic Four.
Marvel's first family.
And then I wonder, as now that DC has moved to Hollywood and it's settling down there, whether we're going to see more Hollywood policies put on their comic books over time.
Right. And all this is why I've been pulling back on all my superhero stuff. So the further it goes down this road, the less interested I become.
Yeah, I guess I should be jumping on Valiant more. Any Valiant that I read, I've liked. We've probably not read the same Valiant because you probably read Quantum and Woody. But
I read the first issue, and that was about all I could take. I tried some of it. I just, I don't know. It never hit me as great, and at $3.99 for every book, I just kind of
that is.
let it slide.
I am buying more $3.99 books now. I'm getting Kaiju Max, which is a $3.99 book. I'm getting Joe Frankenstein, which is a $3.99 book. Now, oh shoot, I bent that one. But granted, these ones have a lot more pages than Marvel $3.99s.
That's something, and it's not some mass-produced every month book, so it doesn't feel.
And I don't know what to do about Batman and Robin. I did read this section. So I've read 2 comic books today on my breaks at work. I didn't realize I'd done that. And I liked Batman and Robin, but I didn't love it.
Right.
But I love the art. So I don't know whether to continue or just trade weight. I think without YouTube, I'd probably trade weight even more things because I wouldn't feel like people are talking about it this week when it comes out.
Yeah. Well, with Robin especially, I was looking at it, I'm like, it looks like an interesting book to me, but it also looks like a B book in my mind. Like, that's a secondary sort of thing you pick up, and they're pricing it like a main event, and I don't know, I just don't.
Right.
Have to draw a line somewhere.
Well, they've upped the prices on a lot of books since Convergence. So Wonder Woman is now $3.99. I was thinking of jumping back on that, but I decided for $3.99 that wasn't where I was going to go. I think Green Lantern and Flash are now $3.99.
Right. Which is unfortunate, but I get those books being $3.99 because they're their own.
Well, that's true. They're kind of the established mainline characters of DC.
Right. So, I don't know on that one.
But I was assuming that you were going more graphic novel and really cutting back more extremely on your pull.
Well, I have a huge pile of graphic novels to go through, and I've certainly bought a lot recently, so there's that. This week was particularly light for me, but like last week I ended up buying a lot anyways, it felt like. I don't know, it's definitely becoming more and more like Image and whatnot. So.
Right. But you've often commented that you prefer Image books as trades, right?
A lot of them I do. And so like I finally just told my shop to stop giving me like Low and Black Science because they're good stories. I just month to month, it's not in my head.
Yeah, and you do feel every month like, okay, where were we? Like with Black Science, it's such a roller coaster ride. It's like, where are we on the roller coaster this time?
Right, and it's a good comic. It's just trying to keep that in your head all the time. It's not there for me. I don't know. And I've been buying so many issues for so long now, and I'm kind of realizing, like, how much am I getting out of some of these? And maybe you just need to. I think part of it too is I just have this huge pile of stuff to read, and it's kind of weighing down on me. And I'm like, how much am I enjoying some of these issues? Maybe I should take that time and read through some of this massive backlog I've made for myself.
Right.
And I've been going through it at a pretty steady clip, so more free on that stuff.
And when you're reading a lot of graphic novels, do you find you do enjoy them more?
Normally, yes. I mean, Butcher Baker's kind of make me question some of it because I'm like, I like that more in issues. I know I remember back when, but I feel like that's more to do with where I was than
right.
how I read it. But no, there's definitely some things I enjoy more, like Extremis I read and enjoyed recently, speaking of Iron Man.
Right.
And that was a bizarre read. And then I've read a lot of Elektra recently, and there's a lot of stuff that was super slow. And if I was reading it issue by issue, I would have just stopped.
That's the current Elektra run with Phil Noto art?
No, it's
not Phil Noto. Sorry, that's Black Widow.
Yeah, this was Bendis and then Greg Rucka.
Oh, okay, so older ones.
Yeah, there was some interesting stuff, but it just took a while to get there, and I don't know.
The other thing I think I never would have thought of if I wasn't all tangled up in YouTube is putting your money where you want to support things, you know. So
right
now I feel better because if I buy an image book because I'm supporting the creators, and I wouldn't have thought about that at all 5 years ago. I certainly went through periods of buying, you know, radically indie books and stuff, but it was just because I was curious about them, not because I felt I was supporting the art form or anything.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. I do kind of wonder, even going through Image though, like how much goes to the creator versus buying something else, and how much of that do I want to put on myself? Because I definitely have in the past kept up with books because I wanted to support and I like it, but it was kind of the idea like, oh, I'll go back and read this later or whatever, even though I was reading month by month. But
well, there are murmurs that some of the artists on these kinds of books feel ripped off by the writers.
Yeah,
but I suppose people, you know, there's always misunderstandings between people, and people always feel like they're not being treated as well as they should. So it's hard to know. And no one's accused any specific writer of mistreating a specific artist. So again, I don't know.
Well, I've kind of had some weird thoughts about this, because if you look at the time and effort it takes to make a comic versus like other kinds of entertainment and the kind of money involved there, like comics, like, I know it's not like the sort of thing where you go to get rich, but there's such a lack of like money for the amount of stuff being produced. These people love what they do.
Right.
Where's that money coming from? And how much of the industry right now is honestly being backed on the people who are buying variant covers and
right.
you know, 10 copies of whatever. And it's kind of mortifying to think that, I mean, it's a niche, sure, but right. With the movies and the TV shows and stuff, you think it would be bigger, and maybe it is bigger because all the sales numbers that you see though are physical
from Diamond Distribution. So we don't really know other. I don't think that counts. However much sells in England, for instance, we obviously with YouTube, we see everyone in England picking up the comics the same day we do. But I don't know if how much sells in England and whether that's part of the count. And then there's the digital, which in some cases apparently is huge, but
oh yeah, definitely.
But in other cases is minimal.
Well, and like, I know The Walking Dead sells well issue by issue, but Walking Dead makes its money in the trades. There's no question. Right. And the fact that there's so much money there, like, it makes me think like maybe those trades are a bit more important. And if Image isn't willing to publish a trade of something, how much of that is missed opportunity versus maybe a rational business decision? I don't.
Right. Well, and I don't know if you saw Travis's latest What the Fugue, but he was talking about Oni Press, and I know that the sales on a lot of their books, but on Sixth Gun are very low, but they keep supporting it. It must be making a lot of money in trades and maybe doing well digitally too. I don't know. I saw Terry Moore saying that digital has kind of saved him.
Wow.
That he couldn't find any way through the comic book stores to grow his audience. He could sell a certain number of books and that was pretty much it. And that once people started discovering him on digital, it's like he had a whole second audience that he was selling to. That's how he described it, I think.
Oh, wow. That's nuts. It's just weird to me because to me, Terry Moore is like this luminary that like can't be topped. And if he's doing that, because he's getting the whole pie because he publishes his own
right.
And he is the writer and the artist and
he owns the company.
And his main employee is his wife.
Who probably works for free.
Or it's all incorporated. So yeah, that's just nuts.
But well, with publishing in general, there's a lot of risks, right? You lose money on a lot of what you publish, which is why normally the creative people don't want to self-publish.
Right.
But somehow Image has cracked through that. And even though people, I think the reason why there's a problem between the writers and the artists is because from everything I read now, I get the impression the writers bankroll these books until they start making money.
Right.
Which makes the writer the boss. No matter how much you try to be equal about it, if you're the one bankrolling things, you're going to have to be the one making decisions.
Right. And to recoup funds and yada yada.
I don't know where all this is going. I'm just
yeah, no, just whatever.
I have a feeling, like back when Butcher Baker was coming out, it probably wasn't really making much money, and it was probably supported by the fact that Joe Casey is in Hollywood and makes money there. So I kind of admire him for having done a lot of indie work when he probably didn't need to anymore, right? He had his Hollywood career and he was just doing this weird stuff because he loves comics.
Right.
Even though he wasn't making money off of it. Because I think there's a whole chain. I think it used to be when you published a book at Image, you probably were barely making money. And then post Walking Dead and then Saga, suddenly now most people, or a lot of these people, are making money at Image.
Yeah, something had to have cracked. It's just a lot of that unseen stuff that you don't know. And
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't know when if you're just supporting a book, like coming back to what you were saying, is a lot of the money you're spending going to the creator or not?
Well, and my main point is like, I don't want to feel obligated to pick up the issues. Like if I just want to pick up the trade, that should be good enough. Like if I'm buying the book, I'm supporting it, and I shouldn't have to feel like I'm not supporting it because I'm not buying the issues. That just seems so
right. If the trades are an economic model that doesn't work for them, then why are they doing the trades? I mean, they should be planning for this. If they're making the trades more desirable, then that they should expect to make their money on the trades.
Right. And I don't know, and I'm not saying anyone's like trying to guilt me into buying anything else.
Right.
It's kind of one of those feelings that crops up for no good reason, and you want to do the right thing, but
yeah,
at the same time, I've also tried to support some books to death, and they die in the vine because I'm just one person.
Right.
Buying isn't going to live or save anything. And the furthest I've probably flown as far as influence is like really pushing the Turtles book and trying to get people to read that.
And I did read it for a while. And keep planning to come back to it. In fact, I have a lot of digital copies that I haven't read yet.
Yeah, so
I think what keeps me, part of it is being on YouTube, but what keeps me coming to buying a lot of weeklies is there's something exciting about it more than picking up a trade. So that the trades or those digital copies I was talking about just keep getting pushed back because I'm more excited to read what I got this week.
Right. It's the now, the whatever's in the moment.
But if I step off the merry-go-round and I'm not used to it anymore, I can see going back to trades and stuff. Because my digital buying habits are I wait for things to be on sale. So all the Turtles that I got digitally, I got for $1 a piece. Which is the point at which it's worth it for me. It may not even be worth it for some people because they might find the physical copy for 50 cents someday.
Well, that's how I did a lot of the Valiant stuff. Was I'd buy issues for $1, and then I'd read some of them, but that always puts me like a year or something behind, and then maybe I don't catch a sale, and then all this.
Right, and you just start forgetting about it, and by the time you do get a cheap copy again, you may have forgotten what the whole plot line of Man of War was or something.
Right, so it's just, I don't know. One thing after the next, and when I can line it up with this sort of thing and actually sitting down and talking about a book, usually something a little more substance, I find that more engaging. So I don't know.
One thing I thought of, I guess maybe I should just be saying this off the air, but I thought it would be fun, like if we were, I don't know, this wasn't actually issues, but a thinner graphic novel that, represented like 4 or 5 issues. We both read one issue, we come on live, discuss it, then we go off, we read the next issue, a half hour later we come back and discuss the next issue. Bang, bang, bang. I don't know if that would work. But sometimes it's easier another thing about you, it's easier to discuss individual issues than whole story arcs. For some reason.
I've just been really attracted to the idea of trying to talk about like full stories, full things where you can kind of dig in, maybe talk about the ending if it's super relevant, or talk about things throughout, as opposed to the just issue by issue. Like first issues can be fun, but after a while, especially, when I look at my pull, and because I've been talking about some of these books for years, I have nothing left. Like, what you think about Like, I guess this week is this month is a terrible time to bring it up, but like, what you think of Batman this week? Like, it's Batman. This week, of course, or this month, with the whole switch over in the new suit.
Right.
It's more liable to have opinions. But even then, I feel like I'm just so happy to not have the standard Batman formula thing going on. And it's just something new and different. And it's Commissioner Gordon, which I'm all for. I'm just like, okay, great. It's something fresh. Sweet. Let's explore that. I just don't have the...
Well, I'm of two thoughts there, because if you read a whole graphic novel and you have a kind of a higher level set of comments, but sometimes the interesting things are in the minutia and you're not likely to talk about the small details. So like I kind of enjoy watching people's videos where they talk about each issue of Batman in depth, because sometimes it's just that piling up of the smaller details that's interesting to me.
No, and I agree, and that's totally great, and that's why, you watch Luke or Joshua Hayes or DaCosta or back in the day, Minutia Minute, whoever. But for me, I'm at a point where I almost don't see it anymore because I'm just so...
Right.
I feel like I'm in a rut, and I'm intentionally mixing things up just to try to make it more interesting.
Well, and I tend to forget you've been doing this publicly a lot longer than I have.
Well, whichever. I mean, we all take breaks, we come back, we do things to mix it up. I'm just I don't know. Part of it is like it's that part of it too is when I'm watching videos for other stuff, like if I'm watching a review for a movie or video games or anything like that, because they're talking about products or whatever, these things that are less, quick snippets, they're able to just do things and talk about in different ways. And if I wanted to try to like step up or do something with my videos, I feel like I almost need that content to try to make a different approach, if that makes sense.
I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense too, but I've been making videos.
But I'm wondering what that approach will be, I guess.
Well, a big part of it is like I'd like to do some cool reviews, and a lot of it that I find when I try to go back and watch my stuff is I feel like I'm rambling a lot. I am repeating my points. I'm wasting time. And so what I'd have to do is take the time to essentially script myself out, put together a video, and at that point, try to like throw in screenshots of the comic, like put together like a much more robust thing. But then there's all that effort, and it just...
And you can also lose some of your charm if you script yourself out too much. Maybe if you just had a series of bullet points of what you want to hit, and then you say, okay, I've already hit that bullet point. I don't need to say that again and move on. But I would be nervous about too much scripting.
And I kind of want to try the too much scripting. On the other hand, though, I more naturally am able to speak off bullet points. And whenever I'm giving a big speech, that's how I tend to do it. Because if I get scripted, I get nervous. But there's a YouTuber I really respect that's in a completely different realm, and he scripts out his videos, and that's how he's able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's good. But at the same time, like when you're thinking about a speech, you're thinking about like in front of like a room or something. And the thing about being on a computer and talking to it essentially is you can essentially just have your monologue right there, and you can just read it, and if you feel like you're getting too robotic, you can just clip it, do another take. You can just be there.
I find I have different sets of thoughts, whether I am looking at myself while I'm filming or just pointing the camera at the comic books and thus not looking at myself. I've also done videos where I made a whole bunch of screenshots from my iPad and then just talked over a slideshow, basically. And it does different points of staring at yourself. I've gotten used to now, but there is a weird thing about that. Just it's very I don't know. I don't have a big enough ego to love looking at myself, so it just seems very like you're trapped in a hall of mirrors and you're not talking to anybody.
You can get something out of just talking off the cuff and all that. And what's funny to me is I hear people and they do reviews. They're like, "Oh, well, I like just read it, so this is right off of what I'm saying." I'm like, that's what I do normally. So I guess most people normally like at least mull it over. I'm usually just like first thought, best thought, like just no time. And so
yeah, most of mine are done a number of days after I've read them. And then recently I was experimenting with talking about them the minute after I'd read them.
Yeah, because I normally was doing it on Wednesdays.
Which I didn't realize, but...
Yeah, because if you're doing it on Wednesdays, you pretty much read it and talk about it. Because what are you waiting for at that point? So...
Well, shall we just peter out here?
Yeah, we'll just kill it. We had all of 2 viewers, which might be us.
When I looked, we had 4.
Oh, all right.
That was a while ago. My final conclusion is get these books from the library.
Yes, get those books.
Butcher Baker is an interesting thing, but unless you're a huge fan of this particular kind of art, I don't think you need to own it.
Well, I'm gonna go off this one comment we have. Red Vitamin Blue says, "Don't get me started with scripting reviews," and he was half the inspiration for me wanting to try to do that, because when he was going through some Claremontian stuff and whatnot, the way he approaches stuff is just so incredible. Like the way he was going through some of those runs, I felt like he was doing like literary work,
right?
And discussing in a way that was just so engrossing and enveloping and nuanced, and finding these connections. It's just, how could you not get more out of reading those comics again, or reading comics like it? Like, it's just, there's something there. And I felt like if I was to go back to watch a video, if I did anything near that level, I wouldn't feel like I was just like, what am I doing here? What am I doing with this? So anyways.
Maybe it's because of when I used to write for newspapers, I found the whole experience to be very fake. So I'm against scripting because of that. But certainly Red Vitamin Blue's scripts are not like my old newspaper articles. But yeah. Anyway, I guess it depends what the script is like, too.
Yeah, and different.
Did Red Vitamin Blue fully script those? I didn't realize that.
You'd have to ask him.
I thought maybe you were saying he wrote that in the comments. I don't see the comments at the moment.
Oh, his said, just don't get me started with scripting reviews.
Oh, okay.
The way he was doing stuff, he definitely had it planned out. Whether or not, how much he let it flow on the camera or whatnot, I don't know. So, also, I'm confused because I thought he had bad internet most of the time, so I'm shocked he's watching something live.
Wasn't he? Maybe he was without internet and had to go to cafes or something for a while.
That was my understanding. But I
haven't seen many videos from him lately. He may have moved several times since he talked about that.
Maybe somewhere where he has internet finally.
I definitely, if you're still watching, I definitely miss your videos, Red Vitamin Blue. I think his last one was about a comic book he was making.
Oh yeah,
But I think it was purely like a handmade product. Like, I don't think he was he going to print out copies or just like make one copy? I'm not sure.
It's cheaper to make one. I can tell you that. But even just printing one separate, if you're doing the one just to kind of have that layer of it just being the flat page, makes it kind of interesting, feel more real. Just something when I was making small comics, like you draw and you'd have the artist do stuff and you'd write and bubble whatever, and it just kind of looks like a thing, and then you get the printed the print, and
I'm still listening.
No, yeah, it feels more exciting.
So So say good night?
Yeah, good night, everyone. Sorry for
Thanks
the
for watching, if you watched. If you're out there.